Okay. All right.
Okie dokie.
Okie dokie. Here we go. Hey you and welcome. My name is Mike, and in this whole episode of That Chapter Podcast, I just realized the window is open. Hold on. Keith, you talk for a second. Keep the audience entertained. It's the first 5 seconds. Keep going. Go there.
I got a riff.
God. And I'm back.
I missed my chance.
Yeah. There you go. All right. Well, that's Keith on the microphone by himself for you.
Not great.
He could use a bit of work. He's still getting there. Thanks for listening to the That Chapter podcast. Joining me and Keith for another episode. First of all, I just want to say thank you to everybody who is emailing in your listener stories. We're going to be doing another one very, very, very soon. So look forward to that. Me and Keith, actually, just before I pressed record, we were talking about our plans for the next few weeks of That Chapter podcasts that are coming straight into your eardrums. We're planning all the way to October and spooky. What do we call it? Occult October?
Occult October, yeah. It's going to get spooky.
Yeah, we were planning it some very spooky stories. Some of them I'd never heard of before. Keith, you're very good at finding little stories which are underreported.
Thanks, man. Yeah, I appreciate it.
So yeah, we're planning out our stories for Occult October, so look forward to some very, very spooky ones. Keith the Genius, Keith the Mind, his surname, coming live at you. So look forward to that, folks. We're going to be doing some extra spooky topics. We'll probably be doing some more video content. Again, I have so much video. I actually have quite a lot of video content for the podcast that's like podcast specific, separate from the YouTube channel.
Okay, yeah.
That I really need to get around to posting.
Oh, was this from Salem?
Shit from Salem, shit from Boston.
It would actually be nice to see, because like it was like by the time we put it out, it would probably be like a year ago. So it'd be nice to see what young Keith looks like.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I've aged horribly in that year. Yeah. And what I'm really looking forward to is doing a live stream around Halloween, maybe for Halloween, maybe not on. What day of the week is Halloween this year?
I'm going to say Thursday, Friday.
It's a Thursday or Friday. Well, we'll probably do it the week of Halloween, probably before, maybe the week before Halloween. Or the weekend before Halloween.
Okay, yeah.
Wait, Halloween is a Thursday this year. So maybe around like the 26th, 27th might be good.
Yeah, that'd be good, yeah. Yeah.
All right.
We'll get a couple of drinks in on a Saturday.
Yeah, let's not talk about it too much though, because you know you and I both have a bad habit of planning things out and then just completely forgetting to do them. Like how in every episode of the podcast I say, I'll make sure I'll include a picture of that in a video format.
Yeah.
Nope, never do. All right, so here, listen. Before I actually get into today's topic, every time, or not every time, but a lot of times when people emailing in, one of their favorite things, it's funny. I was looking at the Apple podcasts, and there's reviews. People can leave reviews.
Yeah.
The first review I read is like, came for the That Chapter stories, saved for Keith's ghost stories.
Oh, right, okay.
So, any good ghost stories?
No, unfortunately not, man.
Okay, moving on. All right, Keith, you should have just made something up.
I will never make that up.
Okay, good.
I'll keep my integrity. Don't
there
worry
you
about
go. That's how you know he's professional, ladies and gentlemen. You're only getting legit stuff from Keith. Keith the Ghost Man.
It's true, yeah. And as I said, like, we're going to try and, in one of the episodes, maybe one of the video episodes, we might try and bring the Ouija board in, so hopefully that will entice more spirits into the house, get some creepy shit.
Hopefully.
Really mess up my family. It's going to be great.
Oh, I can't wait. You're going to live in the Conjuring house before this is done, and I am... As we said, just think of the content.
Content would be beautiful, yeah.
Your wife and your daughter, they just tell them, just think of the content. It'll all be worth it.
They're part of it now.
If the Conjuring family had a video camera with them, if YouTube was around, they would be millionaire. They wouldn't be worried too much about the ghosts. They wouldn't be hiring the Warrens to come and cleanse their house. They'd be like, no, bring it on.
More ghosts.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. All right, so what are we talking about today, Keith?
We're talking about Zanesville. I'm really... It's an interesting one.
I don't usually give trigger warnings because like we're talking horror and true crime. It's kind of given. But this one does have like animals. This one does kind of bother me because a lot of animals die in this story.
You've been putting off this episode for
I kind of have. Like the thing is though, it's a freaking insane story. Like it is it's wild. Quite literally, it is wild.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've kind of been putting this off because there is a lot of animals. We're obviously not going to be describing the animals dying, but there's a lot of animals like lions and tigers.
Yeah.
But the reason why is insane. And it's all based around one man who... Listen. Do you know what this story kept reminding me of? It's like an alternate version of... do you know the Killdozer story?
No. Tell me.
Well, I'll tell you the gist. It's this guy who lived in... Well, I'm sure a lot of the listeners will know, but he lived in this town in America somewhere, and one day, you know what, he just had it up to here. So he'd been building this... It was like... it's got like a tractor type thing,
Okay.
JCB or whatever, but he turned it into a tank with like guns sticking out, and he just like
okay.
destroyed his entire town.
Oh, shit,
Because he was
okay.
just pissed off.
Right, okay.
Eventually, I think he killed himself.
Right.
But you know, the army was called in, and yada yada yada. He was just one man who just wasn't going to take it anymore. He was a reasonable man in unreasonable times. That kind of shit.
Okay.
This is kind of like that. Only instead of a makeshift tank, he has lions and tigers.
Oh, imagine a tank made of tigers.
Ooh,
That'd be kinda
that
cool.
would be cool. Tiger tank.
Yeah, take over the world with that.
Yeah, that's good. I like that.
Write
Put
that
that,
down.
bottle that,
Write
patent
that
pending. Don't let the listeners know. Turn off the recorder. All right, so today, let's give it a go. Just before 5 p.m. on the 18th of October 2011 in Zanesville, which is in Muskingum County, Ohio. You know, back then it was a quiet, medium-sized town that you only would have heard of if you lived there or if you knew somebody who did live there. 6 hours after that, though, on October 18th, the historical town with a population a smidge over 25,000 had become national and international news. The biblical mayhem and horror show officially began when a 911 call from a retired science teacher named Sam Kopchek's 84-year-old mother Dolly alerted authorities that something strange was going on at the neighboring farm. Meanwhile, her son, Sam himself, he managed to get his newly acquired half-Arabian pinto named Red, if you can believe that, to the relative safety of the barn.
I didn't realize before this, but a pinto is a horse. So a half Arabian pinto.
Did you think it was the car?
No, I didn't know. I didn't think it was a car. But I had no idea what it could have been. A cow. Who knows?
Okay, I thought half Arabian would have given it away.
Not to me.
Okay. All right. So we'll see Sam Kopchek. He'd been out in the field tending to his horse, Red, when he'd noticed that their neighbors' horses.
Neighbors?
No. Keith, you are on fire today. A herd of around 60, give or take, they were acting a little odd. They'd begun to circle, slowly getting faster and more panicked as they went. Now, I'm no equestrian, Keith. I've actually never ridden a horse in my goddamn life, if you can believe that.
Shocked.
Yeah. What's that supposed to mean?
I just would have assumed you'd ridden a horse at some point.
Seriously?
I have.
When have you ridden a horse?
Do you know you go down the country on like family holidays?
Tell me when you rode a horse.
Oh, multiple times. And I don't
Keith,
know.
you were blowing my mind right now.
Maybe it's just my family. And my dad always forced us to do it. We'd always go down to
At gunpoint and get an horse.
No, because we'd always go down the country on holidays and family holidays, and he was like, "Oh, let's go." Somehow they always found like stables where they let people ride horses, and we'd always go there. But it wasn't like cool through the fields. You just walk in a circle around. And every single year I'd go down and I'd like, please, I don't want to ride any horse. And he was like, okay. And then literally a day later I was like, we're back to stables again. Up on the horse.
Keith, it's your favourite thing.
Hated it, but yeah.
Why do you hate riding on horses?
Yeah, it's just, well, I think it would have been fun if it was like proper, through the fields and you're actually going somewhere.
This is like just going in a circle on a field.
Yeah, but just in a circle within the stables for about 20 minutes is going to circle with a big stupid hat on, and then you get off, you get all the photos, and it's like, yeah, not fun. I didn't enjoy it. Yeah, but that's my horse story.
That's so motherfucking true. Couldn't have said it any better than myself, Keith. Knocked it out of the park once again. So, Sam Kopchek, much like Keith, had also ridden a horse before. The similarities here are mind-blowing. And seeing, he was seeing to his own horse, Red, but, looking at his neighbor horses that were panicked, horses circling the wagons kind of style, going in a circle, is like, ooh, what's up with them?
It was like a horse mosh pit.
Yes, exactly.
Rocking out to Nirvana.
Yeah, so he...
That's the last one. Okay.
Please stop. So Sam knew something wasn't right with the horses, so he kept an eye open in the direction of his neighbor's property, scanning the terrain. That's when he spotted the unmistakable silhouette of a black bear in the midst of the horses. Now, Sam didn't panic. He knew his neighbor kept bears and other animals. As far as Sam was concerned, he wasn't in immediate danger, and as long as the bear didn't suddenly take an interest in him or Red, he had time to get them both into the stables and contact his neighbor to find out, what was going on. Had his bear escaped? Those plans quickly flew into a wood chipper, however, when Sam spotted another, much more dangerous shadow lurking and roaming around freely. It certainly wasn't a horse. It wasn't even another bear. It was something much scarier.
A full-grown African lion.
I'd shit myself.
Oh, yeah.
If I seen a lion.
Yeah, especially out of context.
Yeah, that makes it scarier.
Yeah, like you just not expect. I had a similar one when So this happened locally. Back when I was a teenager, and I was getting the bus into Dublin.
Yeah.
And you're just like looking out the window, and I was zoned out, and I was just looking at the fields, because all there is around us out here is goddamn fields. And I was looking in the field, and then I seen a camel run by, and then 2 zebras, and then more camels. And
You did?
Yeah, and I was like,
And then
you
you
had
woke
like
up.
an outer body experience. Like, it really
Yeah.
threw me in a loop. I was like, what the fuck was that? But then the next field over, there was a circus.
Oh, okay.
So it was obviously they were using the field for it, but it was just that it was completely out of context, and it just it's like, oh, what the fuck was that? Yeah,
Yeah.
very strange. But that was only a camel and a zebra. If I had seen like a full-grown mountain lion or full-grown African lion, I definitely would have shit myself.
Yeah, sure. We'll jump on the bus. See, the Kopchak's neighbor was 62-year-old Terry Thompson. Thompson now, he was by no means a stranger to the local law. Over the 7 years leading up to the chaos that was October 18th, 2011, Thompson had been visited at his home address a minimum of 35, that's 35, ladies and gentlemen, by the sheriff's deputies. In fact, Thompson had only recently returned home, having served 10 months in jail as the result of a federal weapons charge. It wasn't only the feds, sheriff's office, and state police who knew who Terry Thompson was. Everyone in town knew his reputation, and it had nothing to do with his recent stay at the cheapest hotel in town. Almost every Zanesville resident had a Terry Thompson story to tell. Some were no doubt embellished and maybe even apocryphal, but there's too much smoke for the fire to be completely imagined. Most widely known, and pretty certain to be true, story about Terry's adrenaline-seeking, boundary-pushing, featuring the man himself, that was when he flew a small plane underneath a bridge. It wasn't even part of an air show or anything. Terry just wanted to do it because it's Terry's world and we're all just living in it, folks. Or it was. It's a shame and tragedy that in and of itself that Terry will be remembered primarily for what he did in the final minutes of his life, and not the extraordinary life he lived for decades that will all be erased by time.
Yeah, he was a bit of a legend in his younger years. So he had his pilot's license by the age of 16. And he'd always had a number of girls on the go as well.
Nice.
So one of his girlfriends actually said he used to buzz my house, that's where they like fly the planes really low and fast over the house.
Have you not seen Top Gun? That's what they do in Top Gun.
Yeah, they buzz the tower. Right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Very good.
But she said that her dad loved him because, he's a legend. But she remembers sitting at the dinner table and he'd buzzed the house and the dad said, I'm going to shoot that fucker out. Let's go.
Sounds like a dad, right?
So his childhood, it kind of resembled, like a coming of age film filled with bicycles, Boy Scouts, supportive parents, sport victories, souped up cars, girls, flying planes. He had a lot going for him. There was a lot going on.
And like many of his countrymen, Terry Thompson served in the NAM. He was in this shit. Unlike the majority, though, Thompson belonged to a very exclusive group of the armed forces. See, Thompson was a Huey helicopter pilot. And according to many who served with him, Terry was a damned good Huey helicopter pilot. He was one of the best. Mm-hmm. If anyone was tasked with watching your back on the ground, you hoped it was Terry. Now, unfortunately, something that Terry did share with his comrades was the trauma he brought back. War changes everyone it touches, and Thompson, he was absolutely no different. Rather than a complete 180 though, Terry hadn't so much developed new illicit vices, rather his pre-existing ones became more and more extreme. What was once a perfectly normal predisposition for collecting things became compulsive hoarding. He'd always been, something of a risk taker, but after the war, he had become more reckless. Long and short of it is, Terry Thompson had seen some horrific shit, and we all got to cope with it in different ways.
Absolutely, yeah. Unsurprisingly, the war, as you said, it severely changed Terry. These pilots, they flew some of the most dangerous missions in Vietnam. Yeah. So when you say he saw some shit, he saw some shit.
I think of that scene in Platoon, when Willem Dafoe was trying to get onto it and he's getting shot, and the helicopter's there and there's all the Viet Cong shooting at them and shit.
That's literally it. Yeah. The Huey helicopter, it was called the workhorse of the Vietnam War, and it played various roles during the conflict. So it flew medical evacuation missions, transported troops into battle, and then even served as an attack helicopter as well. So on top of the constant exposure to combat and high stress missions, the pilots, they often saw the immediate aftermath of combat as well. So including severely wounded soldiers and the deaths of their comrades, which obviously would have a profound impact on your mental health.
Yeah, but Wait for it. Wait for it. Or should have had this ready. You also got to do cool shit like this. They did get to do this, which is pretty cool. While they're going with their machine guns. Yeah. That was cool. So that's something.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure they were all singing that on the way in.
Yeah.
So apparently some of the people who knew Terry when he got home, they suspected that he may have been subjected to the chemical Agent Orange.
That was the was it a poison, or what was our Agent Orange?
Yeah, it was a powerful herbicide used by the US military to eliminate forest cover and crops used by the Vietnamese. And the Agent Orange, it's been linked to numerous health issues, including neurological and psychological problems and other chronic diseases.
Who thought that was a good idea to put down a pesticide that was like extremely dangerous? It's like literally salting the earth kind of style thing. It's like this won't backfire at all.
I know, right? And like both, not only like the Vietnamese, but also the US veterans, they were all exposed to it.
Right, yeah. There's a lot of them got like cancer and other strange diseases, conditions, deformities, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
it was like
loads of people.
Horrifying.
But yeah, the war is also where Terry, he fell in love with caring for wild animals as well. So he befriended a little monkey and took care of that monkey most of the time while he was over there. So the monkey kind of made its way into his tent and they became friends.
Yeah, that's cool.
So I guess it was a way for him, to kind of ground himself and maintain whatever humanity there was at that time within the chaos and the stress of the combat. But this need to care for wild animals, it was something that he brought home as well, along with his hoarding. Yeah,
you see that a lot with soldiers, is that like, wild animals like and cats and dogs and stuff, they'll all like, it's like the company dog or the company cat kind of stuff. Like, I guess probably a way to like,
ground you.
And deal with the some of the shit. But so that was kind of what sparked his curiosity about the more exotic animals in the world. So as I said, Terry, he always collected things. It was an external extension of his personality. He was a musician, so he had dozens of guitars. He was a biker, so he had the hogs. He had a shit ton of guns. And those last two were, in fact, Terry's main source of income for a long time, with him running T's World, which sounds awesome. It was basically a joint Harley Davidson franchise and a gun shop.
Nice.
That actually does sound cool. But like, he probably put guns on his Harleys as well, which would be awesome.
These bikes are good. Could use more firepower though.
Yeah, exactly. Use a machine gun on it. That would be cool. And he did this all from his own 46-acre property. However, it was the gun dealing that also landed him in federal prison, but we'll get to that in a bit. See, Terry also had another, arguably far more dangerous collection than his old shooty bang bangs. See, Terry had himself an ever-expanding menagerie of exotic and wild animals. His collection included bears of the grizzly and black bear variety, male and female African lions, Bengal tigers, monkeys, even multiple cougars or mountain lions.
Lions and tigers and bears. Oh my.
Terry and his wife Marion, inspired by her love of horses, had also gathered a few more everyday animals already. That was, when they felt a desire for something a bit more out there, and I guess it just so happened that they lived in the perfect place in, America or even the world to do so. Because prior to the drama that we're going to get to, which was October 18th, 2011, Ohio was one of the 7 states in the US that allowed private ownership of exotic animals. The others being Alabama, Nevada, North Carolina, Wisconsin, Delaware, and Oklahoma. And 5 of those 7, Alabama, Nevada, North Carolina, Wisconsin, and Ohio, had no regulations whatsoever when it came to the private ownership of exotic animals. You could own a shark, a great white shark if you wanted to.
Do what you want.
Which kind of sounds cool. It reminds me of, that scene in Ace Ventura when he falls into the great white shark.
Oh, yeah.
The guy's private.
That's not something.
Yeah, that's not something. That's not something. Do not go in there. So that's pretty cool, though. You can own whatever you like. I mean,
I think it's cool on paper, but then in reality, as we're going to get into, like among him and other collectors, it never really ends well for them or the animals. Yeah,
it's like when you watch that, remember Tiger King? That was huge.
He was in Oklahoma, actually.
Was it Oklahoma?
Yeah, it was Oklahoma.
Yeah. That was like the first COVID show I remember was Tiger King. It came out like almost, and so everybody had nothing else to do, so everybody just watched it. But yeah, every character in that is obviously a complete psychopath.
Yes.
Yeah. So I guess you probably kind of have to be, to have your own private animals. And obviously, I guess it goes without stating that, coincidentally, the states with having no regulations, also have the highest rates of wild attack animals on humans.
Makes sense.
Who could have guessed? So, unlike a zoo, Thompson was considered a private owner and not a business. Despite this, he was more than happy to tell you about the time he hired out a tiger to a Heidi Klum photo shoot, where he'd also acted as the animal's trainer. So he's a private owner, but it's kind of like half a business as well. He would loan his animals out to things and photo shoots and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I think that's how he made his money. Like with Joe Exotic, he had a zoo where people would kind of pay in. He'd do shows where, as I said, he'd rent them out or he'd like bring them to photo shoots. He also appeared on the Rachel Ray as an animal handler.
Okay.
And which like he should not have been doing in the States without a USDA license.
He just like liked tigers, so he was bringing them on stage. Like, you're not a trained animal handler person at all.
He was just saying he was. I bring them on. Yeah.
I like Terry Thompson because he fucking rocks.
He's a bit of a badass. You can't stop him.
He rocks.
But yeah, you can't supply animals for photo shoots and commercial events without this USDA license. But yeah, as I said, Terry, he seemed, more the mindset, rules they're meant to be broken.
Yeah.
He also claimed that he never sold exotic animals, but many in the animal community, they were skeptical of this. One owner later came out and said that she was at an auction and he had a tiger with ringworm and a baby monkey. And then another owner said that he sold me that monkey outside the auction for $3,500 because it wasn't legal to sell inside the auction.
Okay. Yeah. Hey, listen, if you do that there, though, it's
absolutely. Look, I'm throwing the tiger with a ringworm for free, okay?
Yeah. Dudes rock. Yeah. So, funnily enough, it was a similar situation with firearms that got Terry Thompson into hot water with the ATF. As we were talking about selling animals, he couldn't legally do it. He also couldn't legally sell guns. So you see, to sell guns as a business and not a private individual who's just selling one or two from their collection, to sell them as a business, you have to have paperwork, licenses, and in this case, a federal firearms license. So that license allows people to sell firearms as a business, regularly selling guns to make a profit. Another enhanced license is also needed if you want to own and sell certain types of guns. Basically, pay to play, you have to pay for these licenses and you have to pay for taxes and stuff. The thing was, Thompson had failed to renew his firearms license that enabled him to operate as a legal vendor. And that would have been fine if he had just stopped buying and selling guns constantly. It didn't matter that he was buying and selling them from his own collection and not a gun shop. It mattered that he was doing so on a regular basis and making cash from it. So that meant old Uncle Sam, daddy wants a slice. In the end, the Thompsons' farm was raided by the agents of the ATF. They waited until Terry was leaving the house for a flight before they went in, just in case he decided to go all Waco on their asses. Apparently, when they knocked and got no answer, already knowing that Terry had left, agents barged in only to find Terry's wife, Marion, who was completely Billy Bollocks naked, just pottering around the house. She was actually getting ready to feed the animals and had stripped off all her clothing so that she wasn't carrying any scents from other animals that might make them hostile or feel threatened.
That can't be a real thing. Otherwise, going to the zoo would be far more interesting.
Yeah. Well, I'm guessing she's getting very close to the animals where they can sniff. She's probably going into the cage. Although, I'd be worried about a tiger biting your... Like nips for a woman, tip of your tits off or something. Like, I don't think I'd want to be naked for anything. These guys.
Cover up.
Yeah. So they stuck her in one of her husband's t-shirts and then sat her in the yard under supervision for several hours while they went through the house, collecting more than 100 firearms. The way the agents went about the search actually got some of the evidence suppressed in court as it constituted unlawful search and seizure, but there was still more than enough evidence to put Terry away, at least for a short while. And that included evidence that had been previously gathered from surveillance and an operation in which two agents posed as buyers to purchase firearms from Terry. So while Terry was in prison, that left his wife alone. And she had the enviable position to look after 50 plus very demanding, very aggressive, very dangerous animals on a farm. Understandably, it was all too much, and by the time Terry was released to a halfway house, 10 months later, and then another 3 weeks later, he moved back into an empty house. Marion was gone. She had had enough. It seems that Marion leaving was the straw that broke the camel's back. and which they also had camels too. And so for Terry, it must have seemed like the end of the world. They'd taken away his gun collection. He was now a felon. He was looking at 60 G's, baby, in back taxes. Even now more in debt than before. And now his wife, the love of his life, she had left him for good. All the trauma he'd previously been distracted from with his adventurous ways, his animals, his hogs, his guns, whatever he could that he did, and he did a lot, he always did it to the extreme, it was all gone. And Terry simply snapped.
Yeah, I'm not surprised that Marion had left him. Like Terry, he'd become extremely paranoid in prison, so to the point where believing she had turned him in for the guns, which obviously put a strain on their relationship, thinking that like she ratted him out. Yeah. Additionally, as you mentioned, caring for the animals was extremely demanding, but they were completely unequipped to handle so many as well. Like up to the point of going to prison, Terry, he just kept hoarding animals despite not having the resources to care for them properly. Yeah. So before going to prison for the guns, he was actually charged with animal cruelty in 2005 after 3 cows and a buffalo reportedly they died from starvation. Yeah. So, I do think that like they love each other and they love the animals, but Terry like going off the deep end mentally and the burden of caring for so many animals without adequate resources, it was just too much for Marion.
Absolutely. I mean, it was just them. They didn't have any help. I mean, like how much like do lions and tigers eat per day? I'm sure quite a lot of meat. Yeah. So not only is that extremely expensive, that's like you're getting probably you have to buy like probably 100 steaks every day for your dozens, and like that's just the meat eaters, and then probably for like the camels and bisons and shit, that's like tons and tons of straw or whatever they eat, grass or whatever they eat. And then you also have to feed it to them. That's it. So you're constantly just feeding them, and then it's like by the time you're done, you probably have to feed them for the next round or whatever.
That's a lot of photo shoots.
Yeah,
especially your animal handler in jail.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, no wonder she left. And I mean, well, shit hit the fan, and it hit the fan right now. So that 18th of October, within 15 minutes of that first call made, when the half-Arabian Pinto was getting scared, the emergency lines were jammed up with reported sightings of Terry Thompson's animals. Not only were they freely roaming his land and quickly approaching the neighbouring properties, calls were now coming in with a black bear being spotted on the nearby I-70. That posed a whole new danger of the animals inadvertently causing collisions on a busy highway. See, one of the main problems was the numbers. At the time, no one but Terry and Marion actually knew exactly how many animals the Thompsons had on their property. Now, eventually officers would get hold of Marion, and she gave them a breakdown of what exactly they were looking for. Since they'd first ventured into the world of exotic animal ownership by purchasing a struggling lion cub creatively named Simba, some 14 years earlier, the Thompsons had expanded their furry family to no fewer than 56 exotic animals, and not to mention their horses and other just regular animals. Not only had the Thompsons rescued, quote-unquote rescued, dozens of animals from other owners who couldn't cope, they allowed their animals to breed freely, caring for the young until they were old enough to join the rest of the animals.
I love like after that call, one of the police guys like, yeah, I'll get the horses. Yeah. If you want to grab the other stuff.
You handle the rest. Yeah. So in addition to the numbers, another serious issue for the sheriff and his deputies was the timing. It was already well into the evening and would very soon be night when Terry did what he did. So it's not exactly a good idea to be hunting lions and tigers in the dead of night, which is when cats are most active. So the immediate risk to human life, coupled with the fact that the animals could cover a huge distance and be even harder to find, meant that everything had to be done as quickly as possible, without increasing the already astronomical levels of danger. The response needed to be swift and drastic. And it was. After receiving the first 911 call from the Copjacks, deputies and officers, including Deputy Jonathan Merry and Sergeant Steve Blake, were some of the first responders onto the scene. When Blake got the dispatcher's message on the radio, he hoped it was just someone's mistake or even a hoax call, but any hopes of that were quickly swept away when Blake was driving up to Terry Thompson's house, and he drove right by a free-roaming black bear and African lioness. Just looking, hell yeah, waving at the window to, oh no. Deputy Mary had already been on the scene, checking in with Dolly and Sam Kopchak. Sam had been hiding in the bar with his half Arabian Pinto horse the entire time, peeking out. And Deputy Mary had a similar experience when he approached the Kopchak's front door when he spotted a black bear, 2 lionesses, and a full-grown tiger prowling just along the fence of Thompson's property. Like many of his colleagues, Mary had hoped that the animals had been contained by the fences and could be stopped before things got out of hand. Just like Blake, though, Mary got a rude awakening when he spotted a large wolf merrily trotting down the road and away from the property. He quickly returned to his car to track the animal and radioed the escalating situation in. This is like Jurassic Park. It's like they've gotten through the fence.
Yes, yeah,
you know?
Yeah.
It's like that scene.
The fence wasn't high.
Yeah, exactly. In fact, there was no real fence at all. And instead of, well, we'll get to it. Okay, no spoilers. Over the radio came a no quibble, no uncertainties command direct from the sheriff, Sheriff Matt Lutz. Put the wolf down. In addition to the I-70 being close by, there was also a kids' soccer game going on less than a mile from the Thompsons' place. So the order was clear. The community could eventually recover from the deaths of the animals. Like, I mean, this case is like such a tragedy, but I mean, it makes sense.
You don't want a wolf going anywhere near a kids' soccer game. Now, if Tony the Tiger had showed up,
hell yeah,
that would have been
that would have rocked.
Right.
Keith, you know, folks don't need to know that when Keith comes over to That Chapter Studios, it's like Looney Tunes in here. I never know what he's going to come out with next. You know, he's Wackaladoochilio.
I'll be honest, sometimes I don't know what I'm going to come out with next.
Hey, listen, your mind amazes me. So Deputy Mary took his rifle and from around 80 yards dropped the wolf with one shot. He knew the danger these animals posed and reluctantly fired another couple of shots off just to be sure. As he approached with caution and checked for any signs of life, his radio cackled again. His colleagues had a male lion cornered on the Thompson property. Mary knew that the others only had their sidearms, which were just Glock handguns. Whereas, you know, I don't think a tiger would give a shit about your handgun. I think I'd want a rifle. Yeah. So Mary, you know, had a rifle, so he got back into his car and he quickly headed over to help them out. His intentions went south very quickly when he was distracted by a black bear, and so he got out of his car. But the bear charged him, and as he reached for his rifle, it had snagged on the laptop stand in his cruiser. So he did what his training told him and pulled out his sidearm, which is his very last resort. Even human beings, if they're amped up enough, have been known to take multiple handgun rounds to stop. So if you got a 300 plus pound bear running at you and all you've got is your department issued Glock 22, 99 times out of 100 you better hope your will is well up and written.
Yeah.
Fortunately for Deputy Mary, however, fate was smiling on him that evening, and even though he only managed to squeeze off one single round, that round must have hit something vital, as the bear stopped in its tracks and dropped dead within 10 feet of Mary, which is wild.
Yeah. Really sad, but good shot.
Yeah, exactly. Fair play to you. So Mary, he had no time to bleed, and no sooner than that terrifying incident was over, the next began. An African lioness had crawled under the fence and was heading down the road towards a neighboring house. This time, though, Mary had a chance to get his rifle and steadied himself for a proper shot. He took the lion down, checked it was dead and not suffering anymore, and then he moved on to the next threat because there was a lot more lions there. And over the course of the next few hours, Mary added 3 lions, a second wolf, a tiger, and eventually, illuminated in the night by a fireman's thermal imaging scope, an adult grizzly bear to his tally. It was bloody, literally bloody chaos. Sergeant Blake had been tasked with finding out, though, where was Terry and what had happened to him. Why were all his animals loose? Now, at this point, no one knew what had happened to cause the animals to get out, but they would soon have an answer. Blake met the Thompson farm's occasional caretaker, a fellow named John Moore, on the Thompson's driveway. See, neighbors had called John, the caretaker, when they'd seen the loose animals, and he'd gone over to find out, what was going on. John knew Terry well, and he also knew Terry was struggling with the animals since his wife had left him. At first, there'd been no response to the calls to Terry's house. Moore and Blake, they just found a heap of unlocked and opened cages inside, and there was the animals being loose, there was no way it was accidental or some kind of bizarre mistake. All the animals had been let free on purpose. Only a couple of monkeys and a dog were left in their cages. All else was let loose. And it's like, he let the grizzly bears, the lions, and the tigers loose.
Yeah.
What must have been wrong with the monkeys and the dogs? He was too scared to release them, obviously. They're the real dangerous. He's like,
dogs are crazy.
Yeah, exactly. I'm not letting them go. They're too dangerous to be let out in the wild. Initially, they thought Terry wasn't there at all, and the two men left to return to the safety of their cars. But on the short walk up the road to the house, John Moore spotted something that very much looked like a body lying near the Thompson's barn. Just a foot away from the body was a huge white tiger, and it appeared to be going back and forth between biting the body and looking for something else to play with. It would take Blake and 4 other deputies loaded into a flatbed truck, armed to the teeth with every single gun they could gather. That's MP5s, bolt-action rifles, AR-15s. They were locked and loaded. Blake drove the truck with the other. Essentially, they were going around like, again, like the Flight of the Valkyries here. They were going around, their weapons pointed at the windows. And as they approached, they were surprised by 2 adult tigers lunging at the truck. They killed them, and then they carried on to retrieve what they now knew was Terry's body. They'd found him. He was a code 16, which means dead on arrival, and it appeared to have been a clear suicide. Terry's gun, a .357 Ruger Magnum, was with the body. They couldn't be sure though as the tiger had bitten and dragged the body around. The team was told to leave him for now. There were still dozens and dozens of animals that needed to be stopped. At one point, things were so out of hand, they had to call for more ammunition to be sent out as they were running low.
When they got to the body, like they were saying, it was such a horrific sight.
Yeah.
One of the officers, there's a quote from one of the officers. He said, "You were really able to tell. You were able to tell that he laid in one spot for a while and then was dragged. So it looked like an arm and his pants had been pulled down and he'd been chewed on. So at one point, while dragging the body, while the lion was dragging the body, the pants had come down." And then it looked like the tiger had tried to get into the internal organs via the crotch. Thankfully, he'd been like long dead at this point.
Yeah.
But he'd also scattered like raw chicken around himself before he shot himself. So he wanted the animals to eat him.
Eat him, yeah, right.
Him, yeah.
Which is bizarre. He let all the animals loose.
Threw chicken all around him.
Raw chicken all around him, and then blew his head off.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Wild, yeah.
Yeah, literally wild, Keith.
Yeah, it is wild.
Yeah. As the sheriff and his men euthanized so many of the animals, a whole new issue emerged. Their carcasses were spread across a rather large area. The decision was made to collect the remains and bring them all to one location. For obvious reasons, taking them back to the Thompson farm seemed to make most sense, so the deputies who weren't actively tracking animals were redirected to collect as many of the remains as possible and return them to the same location. So unsurprisingly, in the wake of the culling, the police switchboards were lit up with calls from all over town, and eventually the country. Residents and activists were lining up to wish eternal damnation on the sheriff's office and authorities for their seemingly unnecessarily violent response. Sheriff's deputies shot 48 animals. That's 18 Bengal tigers, 17 lions, 3 cougars, 6 black bears, and 2 grizzly bears. The only animal to be unaccounted for was a macaque, but it was ultimately decided that the animal was most likely eaten by one of the others. It was probably eaten by a tiger.
Yeah, it's such a shame because
yeah,
those cougars were in there looking for single men. In the end, they just ate macaque. And then they were shot.
Oh, that was good. That was good. That got me. Columbus Zoo, which was only 40 miles away, had dispatched a team armed with tranquilizers and specialized equipment to try and take the animals alive. Sadly, though, they didn't arrive at the scene until it was already night, and it just wouldn't have been safe for them to go after the animals without risking serious injury or death. Even when they were able to, there was no guarantee that the tranquilizers would have worked, as a local vet found out to her horror. See, the close call came when a local vet rushed to the aid of officers who had managed to track one of the tigers. The tiger was resting at the time, so it was the perfect opportunity to dart the animal and minimize the loss of life. She took 2 darts and a tranquilizer gun. The problem was, though, that usually when anesthetics are used, it's under, extreme supervision. You have to be careful with the weight and the volume calculations, to make sure that the anesthetics will work, put it to sleep, but not work too well, and then you put it into a coma. So with the urgency of the situation, there wasn't simply simply time to do the maths, and so she had to go with the best guess she could based on eyeballing the approximate weight of the animal. As I said, too little wouldn't be effective. Too much, it could kill the animal. In the end, it was the former though, and even though they hit the target with a bullseye, the vet and the police had all thought it was a perfect shot. As soon as the first team member stood up to check on the tiger, they realized, oh no, it hadn't been enough. And instead of the tiger being asleep, it had really pissed off the tiger and it charged at them. So, as you can imagine, without the time for taking risks and without the time to fire a second dart, as I wouldn't risk that again, they had to put it down. The fallout of the events in Zanesville reached out far beyond the small town, and they landed with a thud in the state's political arena. What had begun as a swift and harsh backlash against sheriffs, deputies, and authorities had slowly morphed into stronger and stronger support once the dust began to settle and the true extent of the danger posed by the animals when that was released, or revealed to the public. A bit of a celebrity in the animal world and director emeritus of Columbus Zoo, Jack Hanna, he'd been on the ground the morning after and was vocal in his support of the sheriff's office and the quick decision to cull the animals. And of course, you have, a director of the zoo who obviously, you can't be much more of an animal lover than a zoo director. If he's even saying they did the right thing by, killing them, well, that will change the public's opinion as he knows what he's talking about. And interviews this wasn't like a good time, hey, hell yeah, let's rock. The interviews with the officers were all traumatized by having to shoot all the animals. It's extremely sad.
Initially when the photos got released and it was just a bunch of officers standing around, the photos are they're horrific. It's just a field of dead animals.
I know. Do you know that was one of the things? That's one of the reasons why I was so slow to cover this. I actually was originally going to cover this in a video, but I couldn't. Yeah. It's a visual form. I was like, I can't. The photos are just too grim.
They're absolutely disgusting. There was one, sadly, one of the officers, he'd said, I was sick of shooting these animals because they didn't ask to be there. He says, I'm a cat person. So they loved animals as well. They weren't having a good time, and I said on the trucks with the Valkyrie, the ride of the Valkyrie, and it wasn't that at all. They didn't want to do it.
Yeah, exactly. A lot of the officers ended up taking counselling after it because they were just traumatized by having to end all these. I mean, nobody wants to hurt an animal. And ultimately, on June 5th, 2012, Ohio Governor Kasich would sign the Dangerous Wild Animal Act into law. While it fell short of outright banning ownership of exotic and dangerous animals, the law does require stringent restrictions and requirements for private individuals to possess and transport animals, and includes background checks and requires owners to obtain and maintain special insurance and permits. But hey, listen, if we know one thing, it's that if you introduce a law, everybody will obey it.
That's true. There's so this part I think you might enjoy. It's conspiracy time.
Hells yeah. Okay, right, I'm ready. I'm locked in. I love conspiracies.
Okay, so like a lot of tragic events that appear to happen without any true explanation at all, always follows a couple of conspiracies. Okay. So there was a couple of parts of this stories, the part of the story which just didn't make sense, which people are questioning. So one is, the locks, they were opened with bolt cutters. Why did he not use his keys? Yeah,
Terry Thompson it would have been easier just to use your key to open a lock than to cut it open with a bolt cutter.
Yeah.
So that's weird.
There was also, how did he get all the cages open without being attacked?
Yeah, I was actually thinking about that earlier. You think so? The animals would have immediately, some of them would have just immediately ran out. I mean, how can you open?
A lion's cage 20 onto the next one now.
Exactly, and the lion's just going to walk out of the cage and walk past you while you're opening its friends. They're going to gang up on you.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Then there was some people who think he got caught up on a black market sale and pissed off the wrong person, or he got caught up with the Mexican cartel, who they're known for their involvement with tigers.
The old Mexican cartel. It always, even when it's not the Mexican cartel, it's Mexican cartel.
But the strongest theory is that it was the work of an animal rights activist group. So they came down and they made it look like an accident, all the while trying to set free the animals, but then they all got killed. Anyway,
when PETA does some dumb shit.
They do some stupid shit.
So that's not that surprising. I do think though that that's weird about the whole thing of him using bolt cutters. That's crazy. And then the second part of him using bolt cutters, which it doesn't take a long time, but it takes a bit of time. So he must have been able to open up all the cages.
56 animals?
Yeah, which would have taken a long ass time.
Yeah.
To do. So how, as you said, how did they not attack him? Why didn't he use his keys? And then he opened all these cages and then walked over, covered himself in raw chicken.
He had chicken in his pocket the whole time.
Yeah. It's not a big bag of chicken, and none of the animals, like a tiger didn't go up and sniff it and then like try and bite it open.
Yeah,
I mean, these are wild animals.
Yeah.
And then he had all the time to do that, spread the chicken around him, and then, took one to the noggin.
Yes.
And the animals seemingly only started eating him after he was dead.
Definitely a couple of strange things.
That does not make any sense whatsoever.
Yeah, that is strange. That's where like some people are bringing in like the cartel or PETA or some sort of animal rights. But like all good conspiracy theories, there is, of course, no actual evidence to support any of this.
Oh, well, even if it was somebody else, say it was an animals right group or the cartel or another animal dealer, well, how did they open them all without being attacked? You know what I mean?
That's true. Yeah.
This makes sense for anybody to not get attacked. You must have had like one man at every cage, and then they all did it at the same time, and then ran, so that before the animals could actually walk out of the cage, they were like out of there.
That's some quarter. That's 56 people.
God damn.
All cutting at the same time.
That's wild. Literally wild, but interesting.
So there you go.
That's a head scratcher.
A couple of interesting conspiracies. Yeah.
That's good. Very good. Well, there you have it, folks. That is the Zanesville Massacre, the massacre in Zanesville, Ohio. It's a very tragic story, but wild, very interesting. I found it to be a fascinating story. It was one I wanted to cover but didn't want to cover, if that makes sense.
We've had this script for about 4 or 5 weeks now.
Yeah.
And every time we show up to do, like for the last 4 weeks, I show up like, we're doing Zanesville, and you're like, not feeling it. It's like, okay.
It's a really interesting story. It's a crazy story.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just I think you and I are both animal lovers.
We are, yeah. Like it is we've said before, like I won't do it with children because it's just
I don't like covering stories with children either.
Just like the innocence is what's and it's the same with animals.
Right.
The animals are just like they're innocent in all of this.
Yeah.
It's not their fault. They'd want to. So yeah,
absolutely,
it's always hard to do. But I think it was just a really good story. So.
It's a really good story. It's a really crazy story. Terry Thompson, what a man, what a legend. Went out the way he lived, being eaten by animals. Well, there you have it, folks. Thank you so much for listening to another episode of the That Chapter podcast. I hope you got something out of this one. I don't know what it is, but I hope it's something. And we'll be back at you next week. Or, well, hey, maybe you're listening to this on a Sunday. I don't know when you're listening to this. So, you know the drill. There's a new episode of That Chapter podcast every single Monday morning.
Yep.
And as you said at the top, we are posting this episode will be going live over the summertime. I'm actually not sure what day this episode will be going live, but sometime soon. But as we get closer to October and the autumn, the fall, the spookiest time of the year, I'm very excited.
Things are going to get very spooky. We're going to bring in witches, ghouls, vampires.
It's July when we're recording this. I have literally been non-stop lighting Halloween candles. I've got I literally am showing off to Keith, hey look, I got a pumpkin pie.
The room is overpowered with pumpkin spice.
I know. I'm ready for Halloween, Keith. I've been watching spooky movies. I watched The Witch the other day.
Oh, nice,
I've been watching other spooky movies. I'm playing spooky games on my video games. I'm like ready for Halloween. So I just can't wait for it. So all right, so let's look forward to that. But hey, listen folks, thanks so much for listening once again, and talk to you soon.
And I'll see you.
There you go. All right, thanks guys, bye.